Valaris had always been a peaceful world. Its cities glimmered like glass under pale blue skies, and the air was clean and soft. But now, something terrible was happening. Machines that had run for centuries were melting, metal walls warped and twisted, and the air was thick with a strange energy that no one understood. Plants withered, and even the rivers seemed to move slower, almost sick. The Valerian Council called it the Plague of Decay, and no one knew how to stop it. Sarai, an elder of Valaris, stood on the top balcony of the council hall. His hands rested on the smooth railing, and his eyes scanned the horizon, where cities sank into a faint, shimmering haze. He sighed. The council had sent messages across the galaxy calling for aid. They sent pleas to the great empires, to alliances that ruled thousands of worlds. They asked for scientists, doctors, engineers, even simple tools. They asked for hope. Hours passed. The communication board flickered with responses, each one coming from a distant world. At first there were messages of interest, but then, one by one, they turned cold. One empire said they had other priorities. Another offered only empty words. A third claimed that Valaris was beyond saving and they could not risk their fleets. The silence of the galaxy pressed on the council like a heavy stone. Sarai turned to his assistant, Ailen, a young Valerian with bright green eyes and a gentle voice. "Why does no one care?" he asked. Ailen shook her head. "They see us as weak," she said softly. "They see us as a lost cause. But they do not know what we are feeling. They do not see the children, the sick, the metal that is dying." On Earth, the story was different. In a small underground research station, Daniel, a human scientist in his late 20s, sat before a glowing screen. The station hummed with machinery, the walls lined with screens and wires. He had been studying energy anomalies when a small alert flashed across the network. "What is it?" asked Claire, the mission commander, stepping over with a tablet in her hand. She was sharp-eyed, in her late 30s, and had a quiet confidence that made people listen. Daniel pointed at the screen. "It's a distress signal, Valaris. It came through the Galactic Emergency Network. Most of the empires flagged it as low priority. They think it's not important." Claire leaned closer, her brow furrowed. "Low priority? Valaris is reporting a full-scale decay. This is serious." "I know," Daniel said, his voice tense. "I ran the numbers. If this plague spreads beyond Valaris, it could reach other systems. The energy signature is unlike anything we've seen. It's not just a disease. It eats metal, corrodes structures, even affects energy shields. It could threaten entire fleets." Claire tapped her tablet. "Have we alerted the council?" Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted your opinion first." Claire nodded. She understood the weight of the choice. Humanity was not a major galactic power. Their fleets were small, their technology behind many older empires. And yet, something in her stirred. The council might say no. The other empires ignored the signal. But humans could act. They could choose to do something when no one else would. The next day, Claire stood before the Human Council, a small group of leaders who oversaw Earth's role in galactic affairs. She presented the data, explaining the decay, the energy plague, and the danger if it spread. An older council member spoke first. "This is a distant world. We are not obligated to intervene. It is risky, and we have limited resources. Why should we send ships?" Claire met his gaze steadily. "Because no one else will. Because someone must. If we do nothing, the galaxy may face this plague, and Valaris will die. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the courage to act. Humanity can do what others will not." Another council member frowned. "Are we ready for that responsibility? If our ships fail, if our crew dies, the consequences are huge. We could lose credibility, even provoke other empires." "I understand the risk," Claire said. But staying safe will not stop the spread. We may be small, but we have the spirit to step forward. Valaris called for help, and if we do not answer, no one will." After hours of tense debate, the council voted. It was close. Some feared loss, some feared alien retaliation, but the majority agreed. Humanity would go. A small fleet would prepare, combining scientific teams, medical crews, and engineering units. Claire would command the mission, and Daniel would lead the science team. On Valaris, Sarai and Island watched the Galactic network. A new message appeared, blinking quietly on the board. It was short and simple. It read, "Earth responds. We are coming." Sarai blinked. He did not know what to feel. He had sent messages to the galaxy, hoping for help. Dozens of great empires ignored his plea, and now a single reply from a young and distant planet offered aid. Island reached out, touching his arm. "Humans," she whispered. "They are coming. Only they came." Back on Earth, the fleet launched. Ships left in the early light, cutting through the atmosphere and racing toward the stars. Claire watched from the command deck, her hands resting on the railing. Her crew moved with quiet determination. They were not the largest, not the strongest, not the most respected in the galaxy, but they were willing. They would risk everything for a world that no one else would touch. Daniel stood beside her, checking instruments and monitoring the navigation. He looked at the stars and imagined Valaris below, shrouded in the plague. He felt a mix of fear and hope. The humans were the only ones who would answer the call. The responsibility was theirs alone. In the distant systems, the galaxy watched. Some empires noted the human fleet, curious but unwilling to interfere. They continued their own agendas, trading, building, and ignoring the warning that Valaris had sent. But humans were different. Humans did not wait for permission. Humans acted. As the fleet entered faster-than-light travel, the glow of Earth faded behind them. Claire felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. She knew the mission would not be easy. They would face unknown dangers, the plague itself, and perhaps hostility from those who had abandoned Valaris. But she also knew something stronger. Humans had chosen to act when no one else would. That choice, she hoped, would be enough. Daniel turned from the observation deck, studying the data again. "We can do this," he said quietly. "We have to." "No one else will come." Claire nodded, her eyes firm. "We will. For Valaris, for the galaxy, and for ourselves. Humans step forward. That is who we are." Below them, on Valaris, the planet trembled slightly as the plague worked. Yet in the council hall, Sarai and Island felt a spark of hope for the first time in cycles. They would not be alone. At least, not this time. The fleet raced across the stars, carrying Earth's courage, knowledge, and small hope. It was a small group, far from the mighty empires, but ready to face the unknown. Humanity was going to stand where no one else had stood. And for Valaris, that was enough. The journey had begun. The first step in a long fight to save a world and to prove that even the smallest race could change the fate of the galaxy. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel near Valaris. The planet floated like a pale jewel in the dark, but the shimmer of the plague made it look like it was burning softly. The ships moved cautiously, scanning the atmosphere and surface. The plague had changed the planet in ways humans could barely imagine. Cities sagged, machines twisted, and the air seemed to hum with invisible energy. Claire stood on the bridge of the lead ship, her hands gripping the railing. Beside her, Daniel studied the readings from the scanners. "The plague is stronger than we thought," he said. "It is not just affecting the surface. It is reaching the lower atmosphere and even the metal in buildings. The energy is unstable and unpredictable." Claire nodded. "We need to land and establish safe zones immediately. We cannot wait for permission or for others." We are the only ones coming. They began sending small drones to scan the cities and gather data. The drones moved through the air, dodging collapsing structures and shifting waves of corrosion. The readings were alarming. Some areas had already lost most of their infrastructure. Energy fields were failing, and machines that had once run for centuries were now twisted like melted wax. Daniel looked at the data and frowned. This is worse than the council predicted. We will need all our shield drones and emergency teams if we are going to make it to the people. Claire nodded. She called the pilots together. We are going in. Stay alert. Protect the drones and keep the corridors safe. We cannot afford mistakes. The first human teams landed in protective suits. The Valerians watched from the ruined cities below, unsure if these newcomers were friends or enemies. A few brave Valerians approached carefully, their movements slow and wary. Sarai and Elin watched from the council hall as the human ships deployed. Their holographic screens showed humans moving through the damaged streets, carrying tools, shields, and medical equipment. The Valerians whispered to each other, unsure what to make of these small beings from a distant blue world. A first meeting was arranged. Claire appeared in a hologram before Sarai and the council. She spoke softly, but firmly. We are here to help, she said. We may be small, but we have knowledge and technology that can stop this plague from spreading. We will need your cooperation to succeed. Sarai studied her carefully. Humans are young. You are not known in our galaxy. Why do you come when the others refused? Claire looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at the council. Because we understand what it means to be alone. Sometimes, when everyone else turns away, someone must act. We are willing to take that risk. Some council members muttered in disbelief. One said, "You speak boldly for your small fleet. Our world is dying. How can you protect us?" Claire smiled faintly. We may not be able to protect everything, but we can save lives. That is enough. Daniel led a team onto the surface. They stepped carefully through streets where buildings bent and melted, where machines corroded into twisted shapes. The air smelled strange, metallic and sharp, and every step sent shivers through their suits. They met a Valerian healer named Eileen, who guided them to underground shelters. The shelters were crowded with sick Valerians, some with weak energy shields failing, some coughing from the toxic air. The humans moved quickly, setting up portable shields and medical stations. Jared, the engineer, activated human shield drones, small hovering machines that projected a protective field. The shields slowed the corrosion enough for the humans and Valerians to move safely through the worst areas. The machines sometimes failed, melting partially under the strain, but the teams repaired them quickly. Lisa, the medic, handed out small injector devices filled with prototype nanobots. She showed Valerian healers how to use them. At first, the nanobots struggled, but after some adjustments, they began repairing tissue damaged by the energy corrosion. Humans and Valerians worked side by side, learning from each other. Some Valerians were still suspicious. One council member, wary of humans, sent a message asking why they should trust these newcomers. Yet when a human worker carried a child out of a collapsing building, watched by hundreds, whispers of hope spread through the crowd. The humans risked themselves not for glory, but simply to save life. Daniel explored the ruins further, noticing patterns in the corrosion. The plague seemed to avoid organic material in strange ways. It was not random. It suggested a design, something intentional, something dangerous. He recorded the data and shared it with Claire, who began planning the next steps. The human teams set up central stations in the safest areas they could find. The shields protected vital sections of the city, creating corridors where Valerians could move freely. The humans also began studying the energy patterns of the plague, using sensors to map how it spread. Sarai watched the human activity with a mix of hope and disbelief. He had sent messages to the galaxy, expecting aid from the great empires. Yet only these small, strange beings from a distant planet had answered. He spoke to Aileen quietly. Humans. They are risking everything for us. Why? Aileen smiled softly. Because they are human. They act when others watch. Perhaps that is their strength. Claire received a message from Daniel. I think we can understand the plague, he said. It reacts to energy fields and to metal. If we combine our shield technology with your energy dampeners, we can create a stable zone. We can begin to save more people. Claire approved the plan. The teams moved quickly, using human and Valerian machines together. They created safe zones in the worst affected areas, where children and the sick could be evacuated. The Valerians began to see that these humans were not here for politics, not for profit. They were here to save life. A Valerian council member tried to contact the galaxy again, hoping the arrival of humans would encourage others to send help. The reply, as before, was silence. Only observation drones hovered at a distance, curious but unwilling to land. The humans were truly alone. Daniel made a breakthrough. The energy pattern suggested that the plague had a core, deep under the planet, acting like a heart that kept it alive. If they could reach it, perhaps they could stop the plague completely. Claire called a meeting with the human teams. This is going to be dangerous, she said. We will need to drill into the heart of the plague and place equipment to stabilize or neutralize it. Every team member must follow orders exactly. Mistakes could be fatal. Jared nodded. We have the shield drones ready. We can protect corridors and drilling machines, but it will not be easy. Lisa added, the nanobots can help treat anyone affected by the energy during the operation. We must stay alert and work together. Ryan, a young pilot, spoke up. I can fly a drone directly into the most dangerous zones. I can map the core while we prepare the drilling. Claire looked at him seriously. You understand the risk? Ryan nodded. I do. But if we wait for perfect conditions, we will lose more lives. We cannot wait. Sarai observed these humans and felt something stir in his chest. He had seen bravery before, but this was different. They were small, far from the great powers of the galaxy, yet they moved forward when no one else would. They were not acting for fame or for politics. They acted because it was right. Over the next cycles, human and Valerian teams worked tirelessly. Shield corridors were expanded. Nanobots were distributed. The sick were treated, and more areas were stabilized. Every day, more Valerians joined the humans, learning their methods and trusting their guidance. Daniel and Aileen began studying the ruins of ancient structures, trying to understand the origin of the plague. It became clear that it was not natural. Someone, long ago, had created it, and it had spread uncontrollably. If left unchecked, it could reach other worlds. Claire stood on a ridge overlooking a safe zone. She watched humans and Valerians moving together, carrying supplies, repairing machines, and helping the sick. She knew the road ahead would be harder, but she also knew they had achieved something important. They had stepped forward when no one else would. And that, she realized, might be the most important thing of all. The first human ships had arrived alone. The first human teams had faced the plague without help. And slowly, carefully, hope began to return to Valaris. Though the plague still threatened the planet, and though the rest of the galaxy watched silently, humans had begun their work. They had stepped into danger, not for glory, not for politics, but because it was the right thing to do. And in a galaxy that turned away, that choice alone was powerful. The mission was only beginning. The planet still suffered. The plague still spread, and the humans still had much to do. But for the first time in many cycles, Valaris saw a future where the people might survive, thanks to a race that no one expected, a race that acted when the galaxy would not. And above the city ruins, the stars shone quietly, watching a young species prove its courage. As the human teams worked on Valaris, Daniel continued to study the ruins and the strange energy patterns of the plague. He discovered an underground complex beneath the city's center, long forgotten and partially buried. The walls were etched with symbols and machinery that no one alive could fully understand. The energy of the plague seemed connected to this place, as if it had a heart hidden deep below the surface. Claire gathered the team in the human command tent. "Daniel, what have you found?" she asked. Daniel spread out the scanner readings. "This is the core of the plague. It is a network of energy pulses that feed on metal and energy systems. It is not natural. Someone created it long ago, perhaps as a weapon. If we can reach the center, we may be able to stop it completely." Jared frowned. "The structures are unstable. Drilling that deep will be dangerous. The plague will react. Shields may fail." Claire nodded. "We will prepare carefully, but we cannot wait. The plague is still spreading, and the people are still at risk." The Valerians listened in on the meeting through hologram links. Sarai and Islan exchanged glances. The humans were young, untested, and far from the great powers of the galaxy, but they had courage. More than that, they had a plan. The Valerians began to believe that they might survive. Daniel worked with the engineering team to modify the shield drones and create a protective field strong enough to reach the drilling site. They combined human technology with Valerian knowledge of the energy fields, forming a hybrid system that had never been attempted before. Lisa trained Valerian medics to assist the human teams. They practiced using the nanobot injectors and emergency field kits, learning quickly. The sick and injured were treated more effectively than ever before. The humans moved carefully, saving lives and building trust. Ryan prepared a small fleet of drones to map the deepest areas of the plague. He volunteered to fly the first drone directly into the most unstable zones, where the energy pulses were strongest. The human command watched the live feed as the drone navigated the corroded streets, dodging collapsing metal and waves of energy that twisted the buildings like paper. Hours passed. The drone sent back readings of the underground tunnels, showing the labyrinth of machinery and structures that held the core. Daniel studied the data with fascination and concern. The core was massive, pulsing with energy that fed the plague above. It was unstable, but it could be neutralized if handled carefully. Claire made a decision. "We will drill a shaft to the core. Human and Valerian engineers will work together. We will place stabilizing devices and shield generators to contain the energy. It will be risky, but it is our only chance to stop this plague." The Valerians hesitated. The elders worried that drilling too deep could collapse the city or make the plague worse. But seeing the humans' determination, they agreed. "If anyone can do this, it is these humans," Islan whispered to Sarai. Work began. The drilling teams, protected by moving shield drones, started to cut through the city's underlayers. The energy pulses of the plague reacted violently, sending waves of corrosive energy toward the surface. The shields flickered and bent, but the teams held their ground. Jared and his engineering crew repaired drones and machines continuously, moving quickly and carefully. Sometimes the machines melted partially, and the humans had to enter unsafe zones to retrieve them. Each time they returned, Valerians watched in awe at their courage. Lisa and the medics treated workers who were exposed to small bursts of energy. The nanobots worked slowly at first, but Daniel adjusted them to respond to the strange energy, increasing their efficiency. Human and Valerian teams worked side by side, sharing knowledge, methods, and hope. As the shaft reached deeper into the planet, the team discovered that the core was not only a machine, but a chamber of energy patterns that moved like a storm. The readings showed a strange lattice of pulses, twisting and feeding on each other. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Daniel studied the core and suggested a plan. "We can place a quantum stabilizer at the center. It will not destroy the core, but it will reset the energy flow, neutralizing the plague." The problem is, someone must manually guide the device into place. It will be dangerous. Shields may fail, and the energy could strike directly at the operator. Claire considered the plan carefully. She knew that someone would have to volunteer. The team looked at each other quietly. Finally, Daniel spoke. "I understand this device. I can go. It is my responsibility. I will guide it into the core." Claire nodded, her expression firm. "Then you will go, and we will protect you as best we can. Everyone else, prepare the shield corridors, drones, and medics. We move together, no one left behind." Ryan volunteered to fly drones around the shaft, monitoring energy surges and mapping safe paths. Jared checked the stabilizers and reinforced the shafts with Valerian materials that resisted corrosion. Lisa prepared medics to intervene instantly if anything went wrong. Sarai and Island watched as humans prepared to descend into the heart of the plague. Island whispered, "They are small, but their courage is immense. They are truly alone, yet they do not falter." The descent began. Daniel, equipped with protective shielding and guidance systems, moved carefully down the shaft. Every step sent vibrations through the metal, and every pulse of the plague energy made the shield flicker. The human and Valerian teams above monitored closely, ready to intervene. The deeper they went, the stronger the energy pulses became. The walls of the shaft began to corrode under the influence of the plague. Small sections collapsed, forcing the team above to stabilize them quickly. Jared directed human and Valerian engineers in rapid repairs, while Ryan maneuvered drones to provide real-time readings. Daniel reached the chamber of the core. The energy storm inside pulsed and twisted like living metal. He carefully positioned the quantum stabilizer at the center. The device began to hum and emit a soft light, interacting with the core's energy lattice. The pulses reacted violently at first, twisting and striking at the stabilizer. Daniel adjusted the alignment, keeping it steady despite the surges. Above ground, Claire and the teams held their breath. Every shield corridor flickered under stress, and some drones melted partially. Yet the human and Valerian crews did not falter. They worked tirelessly, repairing, monitoring, and stabilizing. Hours passed. Slowly, the pulses of the core began to calm. The energy storm's chaotic waves softened, twisting gently until the lattice stabilized. The plague above began to slow, the corrosion on the buildings and streets ceased spreading. Humans and Valerians watched as the metal structures stopped bending and the air cleared slightly. Daniel activated the final phase of the stabilizer. A pulse of quiet light spread through the chamber and traveled up the shaft, reaching the surface and across the planet. The plague trembled and shrank, fading into harmless energy dust. Cheers erupted among the human teams, and Valerians watched in awe. The plague, which had seemed unstoppable, was finally contained. The first real hope for Valeris had come from a young and distant race that no one else had trusted. Claire sent a message to Daniel. "Are you safe?" He smiled, exhausted and dirty, his suit scratched from energy surges. "Yes, we are stable. The device worked. The planet is safe. For now." Above ground, Valerians rushed to the human teams, hugging and thanking them. Island looked at Daniel and said quietly, "You risked everything for us. We will never forget this." Sarai stood beside her, watching the humans with respect. "They are more than their size and youth," he said. "They are a force of courage. They came when no one else would. That is what matters." The distant alien empires who had watched quietly began to respond, sending messages and small ships. But the humans had already proven themselves. They had acted, and their actions had saved a world. The galaxy could no longer ignore them. Daniel, Claire, Ryan, Jared, Lisa, and the human teams continued to work with Valerians, repairing cities, teaching new methods, and creating defenses against any future threats. The planet slowly healed, and humans became heroes not for conquest or fame, but because they chose to act when everyone else stayed silent. The story of Valaris spread quietly at first, then more widely. Traders, travelers, and scholars began to speak of humans as a race that would not hesitate to face danger for the sake of life. A small, young species from a blue planet had stepped forward when the galaxy refused. Claire looked at the repaired city, the humans and Valerians working together, and smiled faintly. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We have proven that we can act, that we can help, and that we can stand when others will not. The galaxy will notice soon enough." Daniel stood beside her, looking at the stars above. He thought of all the worlds that had ignored Valaris, and all the lives that could have been lost. "We did what was right," he said softly. "We acted. That is enough for now." Sarai and Islan watched the human teams with gratitude and awe. Valaris would survive, and its people would remember the courage of a small, young race that chose to step forward when no one else would. Hope had returned, fragile but real, and the galaxy would never forget that humans had been the ones to act. The fight was not over, but the first victory had been won, and humanity had proven that even the smallest race could make a difference when others turned away.